One example was I recently closed a pretty big deal, and our COO was like, "Oh, we should get a gong so that like you can." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. That's not like the culture that I want to start creating." Again, to the point of the whole team made this possible. It's easy for me to sell when our product's awesome and our support team is awesome, which they are, and our marketing team is awesome as well. So, yeah, I was like, maybe we should just get a budget for donuts and bring those for the whole company or something like that.
Hello and welcome to 0 to 1, a show that takes you behind the scenes of some of the fastest growing SaaS startups. My guest today is David Apple of Notion. Welcome, David.
Thanks for having me.
An absolute pleasure to have you on the show. So you head up sales and customer success at Notion. Could you tell us a little bit more about what makes sales unique at Notion?
Sure. It's still very early days for sales at Notion. Most of our growth was done without a sales team and without a marketing team, which is pretty unique and pretty amazing. As a result, I've come in with the challenge of really high volume. And so we have thousands of signups every day. And basically, I need to figure out where to focus my time and make sure that I'm not speaking to the people who either won't convert or convert to very low plans, and that I'm adding value by speaking to the high value potential customers.
All right, great. And prior to that, you were also leading and building the sales and customer success team at Typeform. And so my question naturally is, why would you combine sales and customer success?
That's a good question. I actually think it's happening more and more under a different title. The chief revenue officer tends to control sales and customer success. I think it makes a lot of sense because historically, sales would close the deal, and that would be kind of most of the revenue of the deal would be closed by the sales team, and then they would hand over and not really care what happened afterwards. With SaaS, it's when you close the deal, you're only getting a small percentage of that revenue from that customer, both because it's recurring revenue and also because you have a lot of potential for expansion. So it makes a lot more sense for those two teams to work together to bring in customers by not over-promising and making sure that you're like setting the right expectations, and then having a nice follow-through and teamwork with the customer success team to continue to deliver success for that customer, and hopefully that would translate into expansion.
Great. Well, I mean, on paper, it sounds good, but aren't there times where both teams don't necessarily share a common interest? And how do you manage that tension?
So my goal as the leader of those two teams is to create that common goal, right? So it has happened that people come in, so I'm talking about Typeform now, that someone would come in with a different background that's used to working in a different way. And it's my job to kind of catch that early and say, I know that's the way you worked in your previous company, but that's not the way we work here. You need to spend the time to do a proper handover with a customer success manager. If the customer wants something custom, you need to align with the customer success manager that's going to handle that account later to make sure that they're okay with it and that things are priced properly and everything. So I think it's my job to make sure there's alignment. And if there isn't, that's on me.
Of course. And so do you tweak the commission system a little bit to make sure that, for example, sales and CSM are on the same page when it comes to expansion revenue and things like this?
Yes, but in a slightly unorthodox way, in the sense that at Typeform, we never had commissions for the sales team or for this. So it's just you have a base salary, and hopefully you enjoy your job enough to come in every day and do your best work. At Notion, that was in Barcelona. In the US, I'm just about to start building my team at Notion, and I'm not sure if I'll keep it that way or not. Let's speak again in a few months. But I like the fact that there's no commission and maybe more like a team-based incentive where, if the salesperson closes a deal, it's never just thanks to the salesperson. It's thanks to our great support team. It's great thanks to our great product. It's thanks to marketing bringing in the right profile of customers. So just the salesperson getting a check when nobody else does when it's really thanks to everybody doesn't sit well with me. So I don't know how to reconcile that yet, but we'll see if we figure that out in the next few months.
Great. Well, speaking of product, my understanding of Notion from the outside is that it is a very product-driven company. And if I'm not mistaken, for quite a long time, there were mostly engineers and product people. Am I right?
That's right. Yeah.
And so how are you managing to introduce sales into that product-first environment?
Um, I think this is something I learned first at Typeform because it was similar, where I was the first salesperson, and previously it was just a very product-driven company, and it still is a product-driven company. I think the first thing is knowing your place. In a sales-driven company, sales tends to be at the forefront, and that's what some salespeople may be used to. In a product-driven company, it's the engineering team and the product team that are at the forefront. And it's realizing that their time is really valuable. They're the ones kind of driving the improvements in our product and therefore in our company. So I'm very careful about the feature requests I make. I make sure that they're very like backed with a lot of data, and I also make sure that I'm not interrupting engineers all the time or product managers all the time with like little one-off things. So I'm basically trying to protect my company's engineering and product team's time. Um, so that's one difference from compared to a sales-led company. Uh, the other one is one of the biggest challenges both at Typeform and at Notion is that our biggest competitor isn't another company. It's actually our cheaper plan or a free plan. At Typeform, our free plan was so generous that it was hard to convince people to pay. And at Notion, it's a little bit easier to convince people to pay at the low plan, but convincing people to pay more for the enterprise features, the incremental cost versus the incremental value perception is hard to build. So,
All right, great. And so you were touching on a little bit how engineering is the most valuable resource when you consider a product-led company or a product-driven company. Is having a strong sales culture compatible with a DNA that places engineering above all else?
um, I think culture is an interesting topic. I the way I think about culture for my team is based on a couple other things. So, who are we selling to, and what's the culture of the buyer, and how should we behave with that buyer? If you're just like very obvious example, if you're selling to a bank and you're walking into their office, you probably want to wear a suit and maybe even a tie. If you're selling to a startup, you're going to go in jeans and t-shirt. And so those are some differences, but you have to adapt to who you're selling to. And also you need to adapt to your company culture. It wouldn't make sense for me to try to build a sales team with a completely different culture that doesn't really work with our company culture. So with those two in mind, the way I like to think about culture in sales is very customer centric, very honest and transparent with our customers, and basically serving more as trusted advisors or consultants than the traditional view of like a used car salesman just trying to get you to buy something.
All right, great. And is that manageable though? When with a product like Notion, obviously you've got a very horizontal product, very high volume business you mentioned before. I imagine also quite low ARPA. So how do you switch from one role to the next when you're, say, selling to a high value account versus perhaps a customer with smaller needs, and what challenges come with that?
For now, I'm just very, very rigid with who I'm willing to speak to and who I'm not. And I've created a nice handover process with our support team where they hand certain leads over to me and I hand certain leads over to them.
Great. And so I imagine you must be spending quite a bit of time at the moment talking to customers.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
What are some of the first steps that you try to put in place when you jump on a call with them? And do you meet in person actually?
Yeah, no. So I at the beginning I tried to meet a lot of people in person because I think you can get a little bit more when you're interacting in person, like how people are responding to your demo or your pitch, especially if there's like a room of people. So as I was perfecting my pitch or my demo at the beginning, it was really valuable to see people face to face. But now it's 100% on video. The way to answer your question, the way I start my meetings is always by asking questions and understanding the context of why because I only deal with inbound, why this customer reached out to us, what they're trying to achieve with Notion, what questions they have, so that none of my pitches are exactly the same, or none of my demos are exactly the same. They're all tailored to what the customer asked for.
Great. And what are some tips that you have to salespeople who'd be looking to, as you're doing right now, kind of customizing the pitch each time? Do you use specific tools to help you manage that? And
Well, basically, what I do is I've created a presentation that is about 2 minutes long, that just is an overview of why Notion exists, what problems we're solving, and in that presentation, I used basically exclusively customers' words. So I've interviewed customers, gotten their feedback, and used that feedback to create that presentation. I like to make that really short because otherwise it's boring and you lose people's attention. Um, at one point in there, when I'm saying like these are the problems we're solving, I pause and I ask like, how does this relate to you? Like, can you relate to this? Can you relate to all of these? Are there specific ones that are more painful for you? And then I'll jump into the demo and I'll make sure that I'm focused on specifically what they asked for. I use Notion to give the demo, and I've basically created a bunch of templates that will address almost any need from any customer. But if
great.
not, in some cases, I actually build the use case with the customer like together, so that they can see how easy it would be to do what they need to do in Notion.
Awesome. And so at which point in your presentation do you know exactly when you've had enough information to actually start building out that use case?
Uh, well, I asked I like this book called Spin Selling.
Okay.
Uh, so SPIN stands for situation, problem, implication, and need payoff. So I try to go through some of those questions to understand. I don't religiously go through all them because sometimes things are pretty similar from customer to customer. But I want to make sure that I'm not making too many assumptions and that I'm asking the right questions to the customer.
Awesome. Um, and just real quick, how does video fit into that strategy that you're currently building out at Notion?
Um, yeah, I mean, we have customers all over the world, in Europe, in Asia, and in the US, and so what, and Latin America, and really all over the world. Um, for me, the video is the way I meet all of our customers, and it's the way I'm building relationship with my customers. Um, I have like early morning calls, like today with you because you're in Paris and I'm in San Francisco, and then I'll have late evening calls with people in Singapore or something like that. And the video allows me to be really flexible, and so to not have all the downtimes that I would have if I was meeting people face to face of like traveling. It's just like literally I can hang up with you now and speak to somebody from anywhere else in the world. So it's efficient.
Great. And so one last question about what you were saying earlier about building the sales team out at Notion. Um, how do you foresee bringing in a team of salespeople impacting the culture, which you already described that exists currently in the team at Notion?
Um, I think it goes back to somewhat of what I said before. I don't want to rock the company culture by bringing in a sales team. I think if they don't come in with kind of the immediate culture fit, then it's my job to kind of make them aware of what the Notion culture is, what's important to the company, what's important to me. One example was I recently closed a pretty big deal, and our COO was like, "Oh, we should get a gong so that like you can." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. That's not like the culture that I want to start creating." Again, to the point of the whole team made this possible. It's easy for me to sell when our product's awesome and our support team is awesome, which they are, and our marketing team is awesome as well. So, yeah, I was like, maybe we should just get a budget for donuts and bring those for the whole company or something like that. But the point is to be inclusive and never be like us versus them. Like sales wants this and the company wants that, but rather how do we make sure that we're always aligned and all working together?
Great. And any final tips, perhaps, on how you create that alignment between all those different roles that you described? So sales, customer support, marketing, product.
Yeah. In my experience, never shy away from the tough conversations. You're definitely going to have tough conversations along the way with all those different leaders, and it's really important to just address those head on in a friendly, like empathic way. Always trying to understand, always first of all assuming that they also want what's best for the company, and trying to understand their perspective. Because if you understand what's a win for them and they understand what's a win for you, then maybe you can find a win-win. And too often it's like, oh, these people just don't understand what we need. And it's not, no, that's probably not the case. They just are looking at it from a different angle, and maybe they can illuminate you a little bit, and maybe you can illuminate them a little bit, and you can figure it out together. So that's a super generic answer. There's a lot of more practical things, but if we're talking about how to align with all the other departments, that would be my tip.
Great. Well, thank you so much, David, for letting me pick your brain.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Share it with your friends, give us a thumbs up, and see you next time. Bye.